Hi, this video is different from most that I make for a couple of reasons. One of them is there's a lot less production value in this one. I hope you're okay with that. The second one is that the target audience is primarily family members. Everybody's welcome to watch it, but I'm going to be talking about some stuff that may be genetically specific to me, to family. Could also apply to you if you're not a family member. If you're interested in hearing more, feel free to like, subscribe, and join in the conversation in the chat. Let me see if I can mute the sound. Coming from the background. Okay. So over the last few months, I've been experimenting with, oh, heaven's sakes, now it's coming through my phone. Over the past several months, I've been experimenting with different aspects of diet, trying to figure out what to eat, etc. And this time anyway, has nothing to do with gaining or losing weight. It has to do with finding out what makes brain chemistry work the best for me. Now, that may seem a little silly, trying to associate what you eat with how your brain works, but they're actually a lot more closely tied than you might think. For example, as it turns out, this will be kind of a crude way of putting it, you're essentially a walking compost heap in some ways. You eat food, stuff happens to digest it at the beginning of your digestive tract. Once it hits the large intestine, it's basically just a big compost heap, as I mentioned earlier. And bacteria just eat whatever is left, or at least whatever they can of what is left. And that's important because the bacteria that you have play a surprisingly big role. There are, I think the number is like 7 or 8 times as many nerves taking information from your gut and feeding it to your brain than the other way around. Some of your mental neurotransmitters, dopamine being an example, dopamine, 50% of it is manufactured by your gut bacteria. Half of the dopamine that you have in your system comes from your gut. With serotonin, it's even worse. It's like 95% of the serotonin that you have comes from your gut, or is produced by bacteria that are breaking stuff down. And in the last few years, there's been talk about prebiotics, probiotics, what to eat. Essentially, if these bacteria play an important role in your mental health, in the amount of serotonin and dopamine that you have, and among quite a bit else, what should you be feeding them? And what is it that they like to eat? Because if you can feed the good bacteria, then you'll be more able to make the chemicals that you need to function properly. So, well, and if you don't, here's the risk. For example, if you eat a diet that's heavy in sugar is a recent development in the history of humankind, especially in large quantities. And so it is unlikely that the bacteria that like to eat sugar evolved to do anything beneficial for you. And the more sugar, for example, you eat, the more dominance that those bacteria will gain. So you really do have a fair amount of control over what bacteria live in your gut, or at least you can preferentially feed some versus others. I say you have control. That's not entirely true. Your specific gut composition, meaning what bacteria you have, is almost as unique as a fingerprint. You get it from your mom, by the way, or largely from your mom. That's a whole other story. Anyway, but it's important to find out what works for the bacteria that you have. Short version is that bacteria like to eat fiber. So fiber is essentially non-digestible stuff. So all of the stuff that you secrete in your small intestine and stomach don't have an impact on it. And so it gets to your large intestine and it ferments, and the bacteria eat it and break it down into something more useful. A good example of that is beans. If you eat a bunch of kidney beans, for example, a lot of that goes through your small intestine and digested, and then the large intestine gets to work on it, and it creates whatever the gas is that makes beans musical. That's just one example. But a lot anyway, I have a tendency to go long, but what I've found that works for me, I found that eating a large quantity of greens, such as spinach or things like that, I found that to be extremely helpful. That spinach, for example, or kale, or you name it, has a lot of folate in it. Folate it's one of the B vitamins, and this is the reason that this is directed more to family, is genetically I need 5 or 6 times as much folate as the regular person does in order to make the right stuff. Now, that's almost a useful number. I know that I need 5 or 6 times more, but I don't know what the baseline is. I don't know how much a regular person needs. If they need a leaf a week, I think it's more than that. So I've been eating, I don't know, a couple of cups of spinach. I usually blend it into a smoothie for a day for the last several months. And that seems to have helped quite a bit with management of some things. Another thing that had a surprising impact was fermented garlic. Now that sounds horrible. I understand that. It's not as bad as you think. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to make, maybe longer. I just let it go. You fill up a jar with peeled garlic in water. Google how to make it. You let it sit at room temperature for a month or two. Now, garlic in and of itself has a lot of beneficial properties, but when you ferment it, your gut bacteria really love it. Or apparently the good bacteria, or beneficial or symbiotic bacteria, really help, really like it. And so this will sound odd, but I found that I have a lot better control of dopamine levels, or my dopamine levels are a lot more stable on days when I eat that. And by the way, once you've fermented garlic, it doesn't have the really pungent punch that which is a chemical called allicin, ALLICIN, that regular garlic has, which is a strong antibiotic. But you're not eating it for the antibiotic properties. You're eating it for what it does to your gut and for your neurotransmitters. And I found that to be extremely helpful. My daughter, my oldest daughter, struggled with postpartum depression, and in her case, what she discovered, and this literally turned her life around, was she will every morning she fries kale in butter, and she says she understands that sounds incredibly pretentious, eating I eat fried butter, I eat fried kale every morning, as well as dark chocolate. Dark chocolate, I don't know if you knew, is fermented as well, and she went from having postpartum depression to being fine, and this with. And this isn't a sample of N equals 1. She's had several kids, and with this one, she just seemed to find the right combination, and that seems to be it. And she loves eating it. Those are just a few examples, but just a couple of reasons for the video. If you've made it this far, one of them is wanted to point out that what you eat really does have a very direct impact on your mental state. On dopamine, on serotonin, and the other neurotransmitters that make you feel good, make you feel happy, draw you toward addictive tendencies, or make you sorry, let me just go off on that tangent for just one other minute. Some of the ways that dopamine shortages exhibit themselves are a little unexpected, or they were for me. So, for example, if somebody has a dopamine shortage, there's ways of chemically nudging your brain into having higher dopamine levels, of raising your dopamine levels. So, for example, some people use drugs or alcohol or something just as a way of self-medicating, trying to get their dopamine levels higher than they need to be. Most things that someone can become addicted to, what they're trying to do is manage a dopamine shortage. A non-intuitive one is anger. When somebody blows their stack and gets really angry, there's usually a rush of dopamine associated with it. So if somebody's mentally, if they've run out of that chemical, and there's just a feeling of, I don't even know how you'd call it, malaise associated with a low dopamine level, they may get in the habit of just losing it, just getting really angry, and then afterwards they feel bad, like, geez, why did I do what I did? And by the way, anger's not my issue, or at least not anyway, not that I know of. So, but they find themselves addicted to anger. It's kind of an odd thing. But it was very interesting to me to find that dopamine issues such as that can be managed through diet by giving your gut the right stuff to compost. There's a whole lot more to talk about on that topic. What specifically should you eat, what shouldn't you eat, etc. But those are the things that have helped me a lot. One of them is getting a lot more folate than I typically get. Another one is getting a bunch of prebiotics. Prebiotics, it's basically just giving, prebiotic is a fancy word for food that good gut bacteria like a lot. And if you want to see more about what some of those options are, Google it. Google, prebiotics, and it'll give you a list, and then you can try them and see if there's any one of them that works for you, where you just feel like you're in a better place mentally after doing them. This has been a really long video, and if by some reason you stumbled into this and are interested in this topic or anything like it, click like, click subscribe. If you're a family member, drop me a note. That's all I got. Talk to you later.